Barbecue.
And I'm Giggleklutz.
And today we are talking about Echoes of the Eye, Outer Wilds DLC.
Woo!
Wow.
Oh my, is the first thing I'll say about the DLC. First, a little bit of kind of like housekeeping. Echoes of the Eye is the only DLC so far for the Outer Wilds. And it's $14.99 on Steam. And it was released in 2022, last year, right?
That feels wrong.
Okay.
It was released in 2020 blank.
Anyway, more recently than the base game, and produced by Mobius Digital and published by Annapurna, as before. Going into it, I personally knew a few things because I played it separate from the kids.
And you heard us rant a little bit.
I did. You guys were so excited for it to come out, and then we're like, But now, wouldn't have it any other way, in some ways. I wouldn't, anyway.
Yeah, like, I don't think we ever, like, disliked it. It's just, we kind of slammed into something we had trouble with, and it kind of tainted it for a long time.
Which we'll get to in a little bit what that is. So I went into it with knowing, well, let's just say, it has a horror element to it that didn't really fit in with the rest of the game, and we'll talk about that in more detail later on in this episode. Also, stepping into it, they told me, which is a great thing for DLCs altogether, that it is self-enclosed. That it doesn't affect the base gameplay at all. So I played the whole base game without ever doing anything connected to Echoes of the Eye. So I completed Outer Wilds, completely separate, and had the normal Outer Wilds experience. And then afterwards I'm like, okay, I'm ready to start Echoes of the Eye. Let's go for it. But in my brain I'm like, what on earth are they going to do to add something to this masterpiece already? Like, this game is completely enclosed in and of itself. It's like, what? I don't want to hype too much, but like, how do you mess with perfection? It's like, how do you not like smear all the paint of the masterpiece you've already done, right?
Yeah. How do you make more of a complete experience like Outer Wilds?
Well, how about we put another planet in it?
But how do you do that without disrupting the narrative that already existed? Because this is supposed to be a history that existed in the solar system for at least close to 300,000 years.
There is no way the Hearthians would have missed an entire planet in their solar system if there wasn't something special about it.
What?
Hey, can somebody go check out the satellite? I think it's malfunctioning.
Here's how they introduce you to it from a Hearthian perspective.
So, it begins with the Hearthian deep space satellite. Its purpose is to observe the solar system from a unique orbital angle. It is revolving around the sun in an axis that is different from the planets. And the Hearthian deep space satellite was deployed to observe the solar system from an angle which is not possible from the usual orbit of the planets, and it is able to generate the map which you can view from your spacesuit. However, as it's taking its observations of activity in the solar system, it encounters something strange. Some unseen object is obscuring its view of the sun. It is eclipsing the sun for no discernible reason. At first, it is suspected to be some kind of equipment malfunction, but after Gabbro is sent to go inspect it, everything checks out, it's working as intended. What is it finding? This is where you, the player, come in. It's like, well, naturally you will figure out the story beats that lead you here. You get to the satellite to, try and see what is it picking up? What is that it has found? And yeah, if you go out to it and watch the sun, you will see something eclipsing it. Some mysterious circular, sort of planet-looking thing is going in front of the sun. So yeah, you can go in to investigate it, but if it isn't contrasting with the sun, it just disappears into the usual star field. So there's this incredibly unusual thing, but if you can actually reach it, Suddenly, it is just something in this strange bubble of darkness. This space station that is of completely unusual architecture. It's like, you'll be familiar with Nomai stuff at this point, and it looks nothing like that.
Nothing at all.
Usually, even in, their biggest, spacefaring constructions, it's like you'll usually see some ornate masonry, at least looking stuff in Nomai, in the Nomai technology, but this is like this big circular thing made out of metal. So what is it? As you approach it, there's this obvious glowing hangar. You land in it, and there's unfamiliar spaceships.
They look like the kind that might abduct a cow.
As you go in deeper, you find writing that your translator doesn't know what to do with. You're lucky it even recognizes it as a language. If you go poking around with your flashlight, stuff starts moving. Machinery responds to the light. That's not something a Nomai would do. Whatever this place is, it doesn't seem to have anything at all to do with them. As it moves, if you stop it in the right spot, it opens up this obvious door. It's an airlock. But an airlock into what? So you walk forward into this dark room. See some kind of... there's something in there. Something that looks like a control panel of some sort, and some weird kind of glass bauble thingies. So if you interact with that control panel, you drop through the floor. That spot on the floor was a raft. You're in a river inside this thing. What? As you start to look around in it, inside is a ring world. It is this incredibly natural looking space that is inside of this artificial structure, this stubby space cylinder with artificial gravity. The fuck is this?
How did it get here?
Do we have any answers?
The glass baubles on the raft also respond to your flashlight. That's gonna be a theme here. You can use them to, affect its propulsion, start steering it down this river. As you start taking this in, it's like, yep, there's more completely unfamiliar stuff here. This place is called The Stranger. And that's exactly the impression you got from it as soon as you find out it's there.
One of the first places your raft takes you is what appears to be a movie theater. And once you jump through some hoops and get that thing to work, a story emerges. And we're gonna talk about it like it plays out all at once, but no, this plays out over the entirety of the exploration of this space station with a river flowing through it that you end up in. And the question is, who built it? Why? And where did they go? Because it appears to be abandoned.
It's in the solar system, under everyone's noses. It seems derelict. It's like, who built this thing? Where are they now? And how long has it been here?
So here's your last warning before we continue. If you want answers to any of these questions, you can keep listening. But if you'd like to find out for yourself and not be spoiled, you need to stop listening now and go get Echoes of the Eye and play it for yourself.
But if you're sticking with us, fasten your seatbelts, put on your helmets, all that, we're going in.
To tell you the story of the strangers.
They lived on a moon once. Far, far away from everything you've ever known. But they had a fascination with the stars. And as they looked out, one day, they found something unusual, something radiating a signal outward. This was unlike anything they'd ever observed before. They gathered excitedly to see it. They wondered about what it could possibly be, and so they decided they needed to see. They began to harvest every available resource from their little moon, gathering it, building into a giant ring, a giant spaceship, specifically to get to this signal. But they did not hold back. They wanted everything. They took everything from their moon for this journey. And off they went, across space. We don't know how long they journeyed, just that it was one. And when they arrived, at long last, They reached out to the eye. They sent their own signal back at it. Were they expecting a response? Perhaps they were. They got one. They see these visions of stars winking out, turning red and fading. They see the universe ending, and it breaks them. Are terrified. If there's a way to stop this, they have to. So they send out a device to ensnare the eye, to keep its signal at bay, so no one else can find it. But now they're here. They find themselves in this solar system that they have no attachment to, no real home anymore. And they are left wanting. Sad. They want to go back, but there's nothing to go back to. And so they create their own. They create their own home. They toil and toil, programming a new home world to live on, digitally, in their minds while they're asleep. And they plan to just stay there for the rest of their lives. But there's one who doesn't agree. They sneak out, alone, to turn off the inhibitor of the eye. They didn't think they'd be caught, but they were. The signal was out only for a brief moment before they were recaptured. The rest of their kind, well, they did not take kindly to it. They imprisoned them, both physically and in the dream world, and abandoned them, redacting many of their records so no one, not even one of their own kind, could do this same level of betrayal again. And then they went back to sleep, having moved their ship out of the solar system to a place where they hoped it would not be found, out of alignment with all the other planets. Is that dramatic enough for you?
Yeah, it's plenty dramatic. Thank you. So, enter the Hearthians that we play as the player character. Try exploring this space station with the river flowing through it and all these three little villages and some buildings around a dam. And you get a chance, like with the Nomai, to explore their culture, except this time, rather than through the writings left on walls, it's through images, because they leave their history around kind of like slideshows. And they have little theaters periodically around that they would sit and watch in. It's definitely part of their culture to sit around and watch these. This isn't left for people from the outside to find. In fact, there's no evidence that they thought they would ever be found.
Yeah, I mean...
Certainly less that they wanted to.
Right.
Yeah, they definitely left some, but it's purposely very abstract. Like, where the Nomai, all their stuff is erased just through time and weathering. This one is very deliberate. Most of the stuff is completely untouched.
And then you'll just find these historical records with burnt holes in them. Nothing else looks like it's been burned down, not anywhere near those slides anyway.
Except for maybe a temple with a very familiar symbol.
You can say it. It's like,
yes.
They also, like the Nomai, get the eye signal and they make a religion to it.
Hey, you can make a religion out of this.
Yeah, they, in their own way, attempt to speak to it, and it shows them their doom. They reject it. Take all the religion they had for it and burned it.
And because it's taught to you, the player, sitting in the chair, working through the player character through slideshows, you can't know the specifics of how that went down and what they really believe. All you know is they got a vision of probably the end of the universe, which we experience every 22 minutes, lucky us, still. And we don't know if they think that the eye caused it. We don't know exactly what they believed from that point on. But we know that they had a visceral reaction to that information that they got. But we have to choose our own interpretation of that story. So there's a lot of space for, varying perspectives on what you might think that the strangers believe and why they behaved and reacted the way that they did. Because it was pretty drastic. I mean...
Much of their societal structure in turn remains a mystery to us.
Like, I'd love to know if they actually, like, paint some of these slides, or if they're all, like, thought projection, because that's a technology that they have. Like, they might have a sort of reader that then prints it onto slides, for all we know.
Yeah.
Which would be so cool.
It would be. And I wouldn't be surprised if they actually do. They seem to have some pretty advanced technology that even the Nomai didn't even conceive of.
Technology that can genuinely just achieve interstellar travel without, warping. It may not be as effective as Nomai warp technology, but it's unprecedented.
We haven't seen anybody else be able to do that.
Yeah. But then again, as a Hearthian, our perspective's pretty limited. It's like,
Yeah,
okay,
but we have a sample size of 2.
sample size of 2, yeah, in all of the existence of the universe. And we, Hearthians, are a brand new species, We haven't had civilization, society, or language very long. We have a date in which the Nomai have been gone, right? We know that the Hearthians evolved since then. They're piggybacking off of other technology. This all has kind of a time frame, but also an endpoint. We only have this. So how does this relate to DLC? I mean, it's a pretty elaborate story, and it's amazing that they were able to create a whole nother culture and insert it into the structure that already existed for Outer Wilds.
Like, I think the big part here is the fact that they built up and did not retcon, because there's a lot of DLC that retcons at least one thing in order to fit in this new story.
And it's like, here, you have the fact that, they came here looking for the eye, which already ties into what the base game plot was about. They see it and get horrified and go into hiding, which easily explains why we didn't know they were there before.
Yeah, like, because even the Nomai didn't know they were here.
The only thing they needed to sort of retroactively add was the means of directing us to find it. That still, heavily implies that it was there the whole time, and they did a very good job of keeping it a secret, because, when, Google Klutz was playing it through, the DLC was installed and present the whole time, but, you did not bump into that by accident.
No. Like, I explored freely. I even, decided one time, just for funsies, to see how far away from the solar system I could get. And I just went and went and went and went and went and went and went.
It would have been so funny if you just slammed face first into the stranger.
I would have just died, though, and I would have had no idea what happened. Which, yes, it would have been hilarious. But that's what happens when you slam into the stranger when you're not aiming for it. You die. You hit it so hard, you just crush. And it is, like, indestructible.
It's like a bird. A bird slamming into a window.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I died so much trying to land on the stranger correctly.
You'll be lucky to be lying on your back after that.
There's a joke people aren't gonna get.
Well, you see, once I watched a bird fly into a window, and I was too inexperienced with birds at the time to know that if it's just lying there on its back, it's probably not okay.
And yeah,
It's
that went down as, hey kid, that sounded like a bird hit the window. And you're like, yeah, it's right here. I'm like, is it okay?
It's just lying on its back.
And I go over to look at said bird lying on its back. It had nearly decapitated itself. I tapped it with my foot, and the body moved, but the head did not. It was only attached by its own skin at that point. It had hit the window so hard, it had almost knocked its head clean off.
Well, that means, in the sense of, it was okay in the sense that it did not have to go through prolonged suffering from any window-related injuries.
Or any other injuries or fears or anything ever again. It had met the eye.
It evidently didn't. That was quick.
No, it had no idea what happened. 1 minute you're flying under an overhang, the next minute you're whatever comes next. Because that was the experience of that bird. Meanwhile, yes, in our family, it is a joke.
It's okay, it's only laying on its back.
It's okay, it's only laying on its back. Yes, it is.
Okay, so yeah, this is I suppose a point where we can segue to the fact that, we haven't actually mentioned what the strangers look like yet.
Oh yeah, they're owls! They're owl elk!
They don't actually have beaks, which is kind of freaky, but...
It is. Just see those furry faces with humongous mouths that stretch across their face.
Mm-hmm.
And then antlers. For no particular reason.
It looked cool, okay?
I don't get it what it is with aliens and antlers, but this game has a thing for...
horned aliens.
Antlions.
Yeah. Well, I think the Nomai have horns, and these guys have antlers.
Well, yeah, we have the Hearthians who just have big ears.
Go, such big ears. Big adorable ears.
Oh, and the strangers only have 2 eyes.
Yeah, that's what makes them really weird.
Yeah.
In this universe, the eyes have just been counting down. It's like, the Hearthians have 4, the Nomai have 3, strangers have 2, and the universe only has 1.
Whoa, my god!
Okay.
Which actually...
Okay, I'm sitting with this, okay? I am sitting with this for right now, because it's like...
Yeah, the eye of the universe is, despite its name, said to be older than that, and then everything just gets more eyes as time progresses.
I'm not gonna argue. I got no follow-up questions.
I can't wait to play whatever game comes next and be a completely blind creature with no eyes.
Yeah. So, they created this whole other civilization that fits in with the history that we already knew of the solar system that we've been interacting in.
Yeah, and just back during the plot synopsis when the signal escapes for a sec. Yeah, that's what drove the Nomai here.
And it also justifies their urgency because the signal was artificially being suppressed. There we go. That's a good term for it.
The strangers did all they could as a collective to make sure that signal never got out again.
And we can't know for sure, and that's kind of the point I was trying to get to earlier and forgot where I was going, was we can't know whether the strangers did that to the signal from the eye because they thought that would stop the eye from ending the universe, or they didn't want anybody else to be attracted to it.
My own personal theory is that they think that if they interact with the eye, or if anyone interacts with the eye, it will end the universe. And that's why they trapped the signal so nobody could find it, nobody could touch it. They redacted it from the universe.
As far as they understood, yeah.
Because as far as they understood then, it's like, we can't touch it. We can't destroy it, because that would be interacting with it, and that would end the universe.
On some level, are they wrong?
Yeah, as far as we know, I mean, whoever was there would probably perceive the universe just ending around them as time no longer exists.
We don't know what the new universe we created at the end of the main game is going to overwrite the universe that existed previously. And I don't really see any reason why it wouldn't, seeing as it's not slated to be there anymore in the first place.
But it's, kind of interesting to, get this perspective after you've already beaten the game. Because, by the time you beat the game, you've kind of stopped being afraid of the eye as a concept, and then you're introduced to being afraid of the eye as a concept again, and...
just the light that shines on the eye of the universe. So it's incredibly interesting to see a society that ultimately dedicated themselves to being scared of it.
Right, but at first they dedicated themselves to loving it. They uprooted everything.
They destroyed their home, which they regretted very much afterwards.
Road trip!
That is not road trip. Road trip doesn't mean packing up all your belongings and folding your house inside out. That is not road trip. I don't know what kind of road trips you've been on without me that you think that that's what a road trip is like. But no. No. You do not start a new religion and burn your house down. That's not road trip. What movies have you been consuming? Anyway, I'm sorry. I wanted to get caught in that. Kind of the point of talking about this in the framework of a DLC is that, I'm sorry, this extends my idea of what a masterpiece in video gaming can be. Because it's you took something I was already, in awe of its creation, just the base game. And then it's I'm going to add a whole other layer to that. And it's going to fit in on most levels. We're going to talk a little bit about how tonally it's off a little bit.
I was about to just get a little bit because I thought you were gonna say awful, and I'm just like, are you gonna imply it's awful?
No, I am absolutely not. I think it's still brilliant. I think that the tonal thing. So anyway, let's get into that, because as far as narrative goes, the narrative structure fits in the same, where it's, mystery storytelling in an open world.
It's slightly more linear, but I think it's fine.
Right.
Leans into more of the fact that it is a, self-contained, entity all within this. Narratively, it has to be all aboard the stranger, because anything else that would have happened is, somewhere around the eye of the universe or back in another solar system, which they've very much established we're not going to.
Yeah, and, then there's also, just briefly here, this lovely thing where basically as you travel downriver, you're traveling through, chronologically the story, which is kind of awesome. I love that. Yeah, as you travel downriver, all the slides you find are in order of the story.
The last thing they ever did there in the physical was put the stranger underwater.
The prisoner.
Put the prisoner under the water in the vault, and it's like, yep, that's right on the other side of the big dam.
Yeah.
The big damn dam.
The big damn dam.
And so then, let's get into the inconsistency between the main game and the DLC is one of tone, because the DLC holds elements of horror that really outpace any experience of horror in the main game.
Yeah.
As somebody who's really, really easily scared in video games, and sometimes in general, I really felt alienated by this, by, these stealth sections.
So, yeah, we said that, there was the strangers want to go live in a virtual world where you can go visit them there, and they don't want to see you.
Right, but first, can I give you... They put, an interesting curtain in between what your experience is exploring this physical world before you enter that digital world. And they're like, yeah, you gotta jump through a whole bunch of hoops. You gotta, enter the whole thing from a different door. You have to learn how to use a whole nother kind of tool that you've never seen before. And then I'm like, okay, and the murals and the slideshows tell you how to do that. Okay, cool, I'm gonna go do this thing, and who knows what else I'm gonna get to explore. And you get to see a slideshow of people doing, secret council stuff. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna use this artifact and open the secret door and then learn the secrets, because it's I'll maybe know where they went or what happened to them. And, yeah, when they go through this secret door. Because at this point, you don't know about the digital world yet. You just know that they went in a secret door, and that's it.
They had all these lantern thingies like you, and they all went into those... They all, rushed into a bunch of secret rooms. But what were they doing down there?
Right. Let's find out. Maybe we'll get to read, Mist style. All of their, history of what they did. Blah, blah, blah. And where they went. And blah, blah, blah. No. That is not what happens. You use the artifact. You open the door. Ta-da, ta-da, ta-da. I'm expecting, a council room with a table that's covered in, relics or, records or something. No, not at all. There's a green fire in the middle of a room.
And the walls are aligned with,
corpses. Mummies.
The remains of these strangers.
And they're all tucked into bed.
Which their beds look like, things that you find in medieval torture places, or, the way they strap down people in, straitjackets.
It's like a fucking stretcher on stuck to the wall.
Right, but
all clasping the lanterns in their hands. Their cold, dead hands.
Yeah, and they are most certainly not alive anymore, aside from apparently that flame.
You would not know they were owl creatures if you saw their corpses first.
Ooh, they're a lot more elk than owl at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Except for the fact that their feet, their hands holding the lanterns, look like bird feet. Mm-hmm. That was so well done. All of the creatures in this universe are so well created. They're so well designed. I mean, maybe not practically. I'm like, antlers on spaceships is that's very impractical.
And, with this scene that's been set, the character, they physically portray the aliens, very well. They did a good job making a sequence that really freaked us all the hell out.
But it was appropriate to setting the stage for the change in tone that was going to happen next. Because we're going to enter the virtual realm, the dream world of these strangers.
Indeed, we were not on their turf before. Not all the way.
No, because culturally their space is much different with them in it. And they still live there. Their spirits, or whatever, are still alive in that dream world when we get there. And they never really expected to be found. And they're not happy about it.
They're so not happy that it's kind of terrifying.
Yeah.
This is when, the horror undertones, which, granted, when you're going through the slide reel, they do hint that there is a sinister mystery. That vault.
Yeah, they locked something or somebody away, and they've redacted their own records. They react, I wouldn't say violently, but dramatically.
Hostile.
Yeah, because, that's one thing I love about Outer Wilds universe. In its entirety, no weapons and no war. These are not warring people. Everybody that we bump into in the entire thing so far are not warring people. I'd argue that the Nomai are colonizers. I'm sure they think of themselves as benevolent, but they are. They immediately took over every place that they landed that wasn't completely inhostile to them, to the point where they were willing to blow up the sun.
They appropriated the sun for power, and not even just the way they're gonna siphon some of its light.
Anyway.
Yeah, all those missing secrets the strangers have tried to confiscate from history, well, they hid them somewhere, and it's deep in their dream world.
And then you are exposed to some of them, but most of the puzzles that you find in the dream world are all about how you can access what or whoever they put inside the vault, which was the prisoner.
But, how you get this information is you have to go through a stealth sequence. You have to turn off all the lights and creep around in the dark with a tool that you're not particularly familiar with and only barely illuminates your path. And you have to sneak past the strangers. And, one, it's way too nerve-wracking for me to play, but, two, in one of these areas, you have to navigate a place that you've never even been to before.
It's you enter the stealth segments, most of them, by turning out lights in an area, and one of them is just in a space you've never visited before when it was illuminated. So you have no idea what this room looks like. It's, when you already know what to do, it's actually, fairly small and straightforward.
It's still nerve-wracking. Even the straightforward bits is... when they see you, they chase after you, they grab you, and they blow out your lantern. Which doesn't sound like much. It's oh, gee, what happens when they blow out your lantern? Well, for us, you just wake up back in whatever chamber that you entered the dream world in by falling asleep with your lantern in your lap, looking at the fire.
The flame is your connection to the dream world. If it goes out, you get put back in your body. But what if you don't have a body that works for that anymore? What if you've been, had your body just kind of sitting in a room, not taking care of it, before the Nomai showed up?
So, at least 300,000 years. Probably a couple 100,000 more than that.
It's you're lucky you even still got bones at that point. If you try and put a mind back in that body, it ain't gonna work. There's no room for that in the... You're donezo. You're dead.
Right. To them, they're killing you. I'm positive that those strangers think that they're killing you when they blow out your lantern.
And they aren't intending to kill you. They don't care.
No. You're an interloper in their created world. They have no interest in entertaining anything to do with you, even to assess whether or not you're a threat.
They built their own world, obfuscated to, the farthest corner they could make for it. It is made out of stuff that is, based off their home world. It is all things that they made for them, for themselves, and you're an alien. You're not supposed to be possible.
We're not entertaining you. Goodbye. They screech at you while they do this.
I would say, I think it's less of, screeching a lot of the time and more of, a kind of growl.
It's a hostile noise. No matter how you interpret it, it's an alienish or at least animal-ish sounding
Yeah, like
hostile noise.
Almost all their noises are recorded directly from elk, which goes to show just how creepy elk sound.
Elk are creepy sounding, yeah.
I mean, if you look a squirrel in the mouth too close, it's pretty frightening.
Thank you, YouTube.
Yes, I can fortunately say, even the recording of that I saw was on the other side of a glass door, so it was just spooky, not dangerous.
Are you sure? It sounds like it scarred you.
No, it's just,
The point is that, like, it doesn't mesh particularly well with what else is in Outer Wilds, at least in our experience. It's the next step above, right? In kind of horror.
Oh, it's definitely an escalation. It's definitely scarier.
It's like
it's definitely intended to be scarier, too.
It's like the only real equipment you have is somebody else's. You're leaving all the familiar stuff behind to explore digital space. Who does that?
So there's a drastic kind of shift in tone once you cross that threshold. I mean, the ominence is there beforehand, but once you cross that threshold, it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Does this even fit in with the rest of the universe? And doesn't, I know that that's been the major complaint about the DLC.
I mean, something about, the dream world is that, the part where it's a digital realm that they made is something you find out after you've been there a bit. It's like, first, you don't know what it is. It's kind of framed as just what seems like a spiritual kind of thing. Astral projecting yourself somewhere. It isn't even directly stated that they've destroyed their homeworld at this point. You might be sending your mind there, to their home planet.
Right.
And I mean, in a way you are, but only in the way that they remember it.
Right. Which is faulty and
idealized and
wildly incomplete, as the bug reports will show you.
It's like, yeah, like, we gotta make it night so you don't, like, see the render distance.
We can only keep so much of this space loaded at once.
It's an amazing achievement that they were able to build something that could self-sustain for as long as it did.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to think about and talk about for a little bit, there is a drastic change in tone at that point towards a much more scary element that doesn't really fit in with the whole rest of what's going on in that universe. Even the anglerfish don't really compare to what it feels like to be in the dark and being chased.
And, like, the anglerfish are only after you because they're hungry.
There's much less of a reason to question whether they should go after the thing that's making noise in their space. That might be food.
Well, and they seem mindless. I blame myself when an anglerfish catches me that I got too close, that I made too much noise. You have to actively avoid these other guys. They are looking for you. They are thinking about who you might be. And
what you might be.
Right. They want you eliminated. It's personal. So there is that. It held a lot more scary. I was thinking to myself, it's like, okay, why did this happen? Why did this end up in this masterpiece this way? It's like, did they misjudge what their audience was going to feel? Because if the devs and the playtesters are made up of people who are, horror fans, who are making a game that wasn't horror, they misjudged the line where their audience, their players, would feel like it was horror. That's one interpretation that I've had in my brain for how this happened or why this happened. Because it seems like a misstep on one plane of thought, right? Why would you lure your audience into a false sense of security? When I say that, I feel I'm imagining I'm back on Timberhearth, right? Where you have that lovely guitar music playing and the sun is rising and you're sitting around a campfire, which is exactly what I would do. I would spend time in Timberhearth. When I played, every time I got overwhelmed or frustrated with a puzzle, I would spend almost an entire loop just sitting on Timberhearth and recentering myself before I quit the game. I would leave it, if I had enough time, on a positive note. I wouldn't leave frustrated. I would try and recenter myself in my love for the game and the peace for the game. Because and of course, at that point, the thing I was trying to do in the game was trying to figure out if I could save Timberhearth. Either because the eye of the universe is can change the course of whether or not your sun blows up, or the Nomai did it, and maybe we could turn their machinery off before it does. So, it was a hopeful thing, and being there was peaceful and hopeful. And, well, why would you, when you have that there, and it's so beautiful, why does this other thing exist in the same game? It just seems so juxtaposed, right? And I thought, well, maybe they misjudged how, people who have no tolerance for horror, or very little tolerance for horror, would have been able to make it through the scary parts of the Dark Bramble, but really can't face being literally targeted. And one of my thoughts was, well, maybe to the developers, the existential dread of the sun blowing up was equivalent to horror. I don't have existential dread the way a lot of people do, so I'm sometimes a little insensitive about how deep those existential fears can go for people. And so, I've hurt people's feelings before around this kind of thing, so I'm leaving space now for the fact that, well, maybe that is really, really super scary to people who aren't me.
I also don't, have a ton of fear about the sun eating the world or anything like that. Going nova. It's just like, it was something I was introduced in, to, pretty young. Was slated to not even happen, having even a remote chance of happening while I was alive, so being afraid of, the sun expanding or blowing up isn't a huge thing for me. It just kind of seemed like either, out of my lifetime, above my pay grade, or just, something that's just too existentially destructive for me to, worry too much about it. Owl attacks are a different matter, though. That's a much more recent fear for me. A trail not too far from where I live, and I bumped into an owl out there once. It was not in great shape and was not happy to see me.
Do I know this story?
I've probably told you before. It's like, I was out on the trail, a bit too late apparently, and there was this owl kind of on the ground, so it's, not doing too well, and as I was going by, it was making some rather unpleasant noises in my general direction. It's like, I don't even know for certain if it was upset about me being there, but I'm okay never knowing the answer to that question. Well, okay, maybe if I end up, learning more about owls like that at some point, I might get the answer there, but, I have waited an adequate amount of time away from that scenario to get answers about it.
If you were gonna get any.
Yeah.
Now you just have to make up your own mind, which kind of leads right into my final interpretation as to that tonal shift and why it's there. And I think they knew it was going to hit people wrong, and that it was going to cause a visceral reaction in at least a significant portion of their player base, and that they made the decision that they were going to be okay with that, because the story they were trying to tell and the juxtaposition between the two cultures that they represented through these aliens was drastic enough that they wanted to paint these strangers in the light of horror. They wanted you to see that the choices that they were making could be interpreted as horrific. That thinking about life and the universe and things you don't understand in this black or white fashion leads to horrific consequences, no matter how many baby steps it took you to get there. And I think that they thought it was important enough to lose some of their audience in the discomfort of that juxtaposed tone. I think that, it might not have been. I don't know. But when I think about the genius of how they've used culture, and the genius of how they've used tone, and the genius of how they've used symbolism, which I haven't gotten into here at all, and I might not, it's just, my brain has been super stimulated by this game. I think about it all the time. I want to talk about it with people all the time. I want to replay.
But you can't, not really.
Oh, and I can, though, because I'm thinking about things differently than I was last time I played. There are things I want to experience again and see if it's different now. But yeah, I can't experience for the first time again. No. I can't have that element of surprise. No. But do I give them the benefit of the doubt that they did this deliberately, and that it was a risk they decided they were willing to take with their property here. And I think it was worth it. But then again, I also better knew what I was getting into because I had people in my life whose opinions I really value about what's worthwhile to play and to spend time doing in video games, to the point where people were perched around me to watch me play when I could, and the horror elements, the kids warned me off of it to the point where I didn't even play the horror elements really. Sackbot played them for me, and I watched.
Hell, there was one of them that Shuckle reminded me told me how to bypass.
That's because, that's the one that you don't get to scout out beforehand, so it's kind of cheap anyway.
Yeah, it's I just want to say about the horror elements in this is I don't even know that the gameplay there was bad or unpleasant to me. It's well, obviously it's frightening, and that was the point, but it's if it just kind of drops you too far in, at the end they drop you in is too deep, too soon. It's I had a bit more time to get, comfortable with, the kind of stuff they were expecting me to do to get to the heart of this whole DLC. It's I might have enjoyed it a lot more. It definitely, had a very strong vibe to it. It was a very engaging thing. It felt like a lot of the wrong reasons at the time, and it kind of still does, but...
And at the same time, I wonder how much of that juxtaposition was forced by the 22-minute time frame. I wonder what they would have done had they not had to conform the DLC to the time loops.
And a potential budget thing, which, something might be hindered by budget, is just, have a, tutorial stealth segment that teaches you how to get to the rest of them.
Which is clever, too. I think they do tutorial great in these two titles, I guess.
Any more points before we, finally work on getting that vault open?
So you go from campfire circle with corpses into killer owl hide and seek, and where does it lead you? What's the whole purpose of that?
To get to this vault in the bottom of the reservoir.
And what does that buy you?
Well, if you do that in the physical world, you see that there's a second vault inside. There's the big outer one, and then there's the inner one. But if you go to the dream world, you see that it's got these 3 seals on it and different puzzles to undo them.
Well, they've been teasing you that they've sealed the vault somehow, since the beginning. That is one of the earliest bits of lore you learn about the strangers, is that they're hiding something.
I mean, yeah.
Besides their entire civilization?
There's something in the vault that they do not want to get out.
And so it's your biggest mission to undo them. One by one. Of course, you need to do it all at once because it's one cycle, but still you learn how to do it one by one.
It's another kind of eye of the universe sort of thing. You figure out what the secrets of events you need to do to get to your ultimate objective.
Mm-hmm.
Notably, you can try to open the vault early, and it will, show you one of the crucial messages you need to get started. Whatever is in there does indeed want you to get it out, and is actively trying to contact you.
So, when you finally get it open...
after doing some neat speedrun tricks, which are actually developer intended...
You climb into the vault, because when you open it in the dream world, it's actually a tunnel. It's a lot bigger on the inside.
It's amazing how you can do that in digital realms.
They already can see them, actually taking the vault apart in the dream world and moving it somewhere else without letting its contents out. The idea that it's bigger on the inside is not such a big stretch.
So you enter the vault, and you begin to walk inside, and it's really dark, and you can't see shit. But then you end up in this small room. And as you look around, there's this telescope looking out at the stars. Even here, you can go and see the stars, for what it's worth. But you go downstairs, even farther into this vault, and there, in the darkness, you see a second lantern. You see another stranger. They come out of the darkness, and you see that they are prisoner. They have one of their horns cut off. There's a chance you've seen their portrait scratched out somewhere on the stranger, and they project their history at you. They project what they've done and how they ended up here.
Show you that they still believed in the eye, that they wanted to know more, that they were curious I just wanted to let it speak its words to the universe. Just drove them to just hop right out of the dream world and set it free.
But once they've told you this, they offer their... I forget what it's called.
I believe it was referred to as the Vision Torch.
Vision Torch.
The very tool they use to beam their story into your mind, and they hand it to you.
And depending on how much of the game you've explored, you get to tell the prisoner what happened after they got sealed away. Like, you show them images of what the stranger looks like now. You, imagine the signal reaching out across the universe, bringing the Nomai to the solar system. You show the Nomai arriving, the Nomai perishing. And you show how the Nomai story is what encouraged you to become an astronaut to begin with. And eventually that led you to where you are now. And it's all because of the prisoner's sacrifice.
So they let that signal get out, and the very same thing that had driven, the strangers, the prisoners' people to that solar system had found others, and they came running too, and inspired 2 other species.
Yeah.
The prisoner has a strong reaction to that. Not entirely sure what it is, but it might be joy. It might be sorrow.
Yeah, it's really hard to tell. It's kind of just like a screech, almost.
I remember the music that follows being rather uplifting. Right, yeah. Now that you've told each other stories, the vault's still open.
So the prisoner leaves first, but sends the elevator back down for you. And when you leave after them, you can see their vision torch on the shore of this lake. But you don't see the prisoner anywhere. And if you go to see what the vision torch is projecting to you, you see yourself and the prisoner getting on a raft and sailing off, who knows where, but off into the distance, together.
Watch the stars.
It's really tragic.
The water in the dream is the same as the water outside. It puts out fires.
They wanted to be your friend, but they didn't want to exist anymore. There was nothing there for them.
Or perhaps they're too excited to think what would happen if they fell in the water.
It looked pretty deliberate to me.
That's why the stick didn't go with them. They left you a message, so you wouldn't look for them.
Normally, to get in the dream world, you fall asleep, but dying works too. You can do the same thing they did. You have no way back out either. The water's right there if you go into it.
It's one of the few ways to die in the game. Altogether.
I mean, you still have a time loop.
Not when you go see them, because you died.
You have a time loop.
The Ash Twin Project is still able to recover you somehow.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot. I jumped. I jumped ahead.
You go in the water too. That's just when it drops the title. It's like the closest thing you get to credits. It indicates to you that, this is the end. You've finished the DLC.
But if you go get the normal ending, there's something a little different.
It's like there was somebody else you met on your journey. Somebody who wasn't quite alive anymore, who you took with you into the eye of the universe.
Yeah, you can bring the prisoner there. And the prisoner is really nervous to be there. My people did some bad stuff, and they were scared. I don't know what kind of energy that might bring to this otherwise happy reunion. Are you sure you want me there?
And it's like, yeah, you can say no, but the segment wouldn't be interesting if... Come on, pal, come play music with us. Let's make the new universe together. So yeah, there's a whole new instrument. All gather around the fire, play your song, just a little richer. But a little goes a long way in the new universe.
You thought it was full of life before, now there's even more of it.
Each adding a layer to the song.
Mm-hmm.
It ties itself up in an actually pretty nice bow. No matter what you had to go through to make that happen.
I'm going to listen to the song of life, and I'm going to bask in it.
Even if as individuals you don't get to participate. You get to be an essential part of the flow. Of the cycle. Of life continuing on.
The real eye of the universe was the friends we met along the way. And the new universe... Okay, maybe just cut this bit.
No.
I mean, maybe the new universe was the friendships they made along the way, and the eye of the universe was the car in the road trip.
I don't know if I'm ever going on a road trip with you. Ever again. Like, ever. If you think that that's what road trips are.
It's like, even if you, we pre-established that we are going to, end up... This is going to end with us burning down a church or something. It's like, It's like, it would be this wild thing that would just be like... That would be one of my great stories, but at the same time, I can have those without arson. It's like, apparently, I can just go accidentally stumble upon owls or something.
Okay, guys, we better end this episode before we end up on a watch list. I'm serious. Like, Jesus Christ. I mean, I know where you're coming from, but people who haven't played this are going to be like, what?
What? My viewers love arson!
Okay, well, we sure burned down this episode at the end.
Oh, goodness. So, anyway, in just wrapping up the episode so we can sign off, I'm gonna say, what? Okay, what? Okay.
Yeah, the next episode, we're planning to just go all in and get real scared. We're gonna talk about fear and horror.
And what Outer Wilds does with it.
Right, which we talked a little bit about why they might do that. But we're going to talk next time about what that does for the storytelling.
Yeah, and probably touch on a little bit more of what it does for the world, too, a little bit.
Sure. I mean, all aspects. Because it's a huge theme that is consistent between both the main story and the DLC. So yes, join us next week, for our episode on Outer Wilds and fear.
Ooh.
Not spooky, fear. You see, that's even less spooky than it was before.
I can't do an elk.
Anyway, I'm Giggleklutz.
I'm Honeyshuckleex.
And I am Sackbot Barbecue.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.